My name's Philippe Simet. I'm a philosopher, and I'm interested in what architecture can tell us about our lifestyles. I'll take you to explore some of the most remarkable habitats on the planet in order to discover their meaning and to share their riches. Tokyo, a megalopolis of 38 million inhabitants, is often described as chaotic and bewildering. The city indeed appears to be a complex web of ultra-modern buildings and small private houses assembled together like pieces of Lego with no apparent consistency. Twice destroyed in 1923 after a terrible earthquake, then in 1945 after the American bombardments, Tokyo has risen from its ashes each time, and since then seems to be perpetually reinventing itself in order to satisfy its insatiable need for expansion. With its 13,500 inhabitants per square meter, Tokyo is one of the most densely populated cities in the world. Lack of space is a permanent problem. To deal with this, the city landscape has undergone a new transformation with the appearance of microhomes. These ultra-small houses that rival one another in innovative design are popping up on the slightest available plot of land, however small. It's these microhomes that offer an alternative way of living in the city that I've come here to discover. In the heart of the Shibuya district, one of the busiest in Tokyo, stands a surprising house, nestled between a car park and a building. It's that of Satoshi and his family. Satoshi, hello.
Hello, Philippe.
This facade is unbelievable. It's barely the width of my arms.
It's very small, but it's much wider on the side. Please, come in.
Thank you. Wow.
Welcome.
It's quite surprising because when you see the facade, you get the impression that the house is extremely narrow, whereas it's actually quite spacious inside. The living room and a garden even. I didn't expect that.
It's very small, but in addition to this floor, there's also a basement and an upper floor. The place I'm most proud of is the bathroom upstairs.
Thank you. Wow.
This room is my pride and joy.
Really? Why the bathroom? That's a bit surprising.
This bathtub is like an outside bath. It has a link to the outside. It's bright and sunny here in the morning. I take a hot bath here, and then I'm ready for my work day. In the evening, I relax here. I can listen to music, birds singing, the murmur of a river, and I forget everything else. It's a wonderful place.
So this is the bedroom. The bed's gigantic. It takes up the entire room.
My daughter, my wife, and I all sleep together in this room. In Japan, when the children are little, we all sleep together. That's a tradition.
Does that mean she doesn't have her own room?
Miroku's room is in the basement. For the time being, that's where she plays her piano and trumpet and does her homework. That's what it's used for. When she gets older, she can sleep there.
I'm amazed by the shape of your house. I find it incredible that houses can be built in Tokyo on such narrow strips of land.
The plot measures 59 square meters, but because it's what's called a flag lot, we had to build a house on an even smaller surface, 25 square meters. If the land had had a better shape, the price would have been much higher. This land wasn't even for sale, but the owner agreed to divide it up and sell us this small plot. As a general rule, land such as this is passed down from generation to generation, and they are hard to come by in Shibuya. There haven't been any for sale here for the past 13 years.
When you were told that your house would have a floor surface of 25 square meters, did you imagine ever being able to live here?
At first, I thought we wouldn't be able to, but I changed my perspective. I thought of it not only as a surface, but as a space, a cube. So, even if the surface is small, by superimposing levels, like Lego pieces, we can obtain a 3-storied house, and the 25 square meters becomes 80 square meters.
With such narrow surfaces, everything needs to be very functional in order to save space, and yet you've built this house around these empty spaces, which is a bit contradictory.
For us, the house wasn't just somewhere to eat and sleep. Our idea was to combine beauty and functionality in order to fully enjoy life here. Shibuya is a recent district. It's very animated and noisy. It can be a bit stressful in certain areas, but then you come back here and it's peaceful. You can relax. We've managed to combine these two aspects, and for me, that's priceless.
For me, these microhouses act as switches. They enable us to connect to the urban energy, to receive its electricity, and at the same time to disconnect from it when it becomes too intense for us.
Do you want some cookies? I'll heat up some milk for you. Would you like some coffee?
Oh, yes, please. It's not going to be easy. If not, tea'll be fine.
She's made herself comfortable. You have to press this button, the big one. She doesn't even budge. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, if I'm not mistaken, this area is the kitchen, the dining room, and the living room all at the same time.
Yes, this is the kitchen, but we can conceal it behind these sliding panels. They hide the kitchen.
That's very practical. So when do you decide to open or close the panels?
When I have guests and the kitchen is a bit messy, I close the panels and you can't see anything. In this way, with the kitchen closed off, the living room is more elegant and we can relax. How's it going? That's right.
This room is certainly very functional, but even so, wouldn't you prefer to live in a bigger space?
No, not at all. My parents' house is a very old Japanese-style house. It has 13 rooms altogether. When I was a child, this big house used to scare me a bit. As a lot of the rooms weren't used, I couldn't really find my place there. Our house is certainly much smaller, but each room serves a function. Also, here, I'm surrounded by objects that are dear to me. A photo of my cats, gifts that my daughter has made for me. The things I care about are all close to me. And because it's small, I can surround myself with these things and feel at ease.
Listening to you, it seems as if the house is really an extension of oneself, and that it's not so much the size that counts, but the way in which one feels connected to it. This strong bond with such a small space surprises me. While it's certainly the sign of a family well-being, it also represents a form of retreat, which is hard to understand. Doesn't the small size of these houses push one more towards escaping outside? How do you have any privacy in a space that's unavoidably shared by all? Particularly when you're a young couple, how do you live in this type of house? In the working-class district of Aoto, rows and rows of these modern microhouses are clustered together on a small parcel of land. Nami and one of her friends are waiting for me on the doorstep of one of these houses. Nami lives in 60 square meters with her sister and parents. She agrees to show me how she reconciles this space and her need for privacy. Hello. I see you're enjoying the sunshine.
As it's a sunny day, it's nicer outside than inside. Would you like to come in?
Yes, thank you.
Please, come in.
Thanks.
Shall we go up?
Yes.
This is the ground floor. And this is the first floor. That's the kitchen. My bedroom's up here. This is my bedroom. There's not enough room for 2 people, so I'll let you go in.
Wow. It's tiny.
It's small, but I only use it as a place to sleep. When I'm at home, I'm usually in the living room, so it's no problem.
You're a young 28-year-old woman. You work, and yet you still live with your parents in a very small house. I have a hard time understanding how you live here.
In Japan, it's not unusual for young people in their 20s, like me, to still live with their parents until they get married, for example. I'm not an exception.
Don't you find it hard to live in such small spaces? A small bathroom, a small kitchen, a tiny bedroom?
No, I'm not often at home. I usually see my friends outside, for dinner, for example. I'm only at home for family meals and to sleep. That's what this space is used for. And I'm perfectly content with that.
There's still something that intrigues me. How do you have any privacy in such a confined space?
Well, you see your boyfriend outside rather than at home. You can go to a love hotel, for example. A lot of people live like this, I think. If you only have a shower at home and no bathtub, and you want to take a bath, you can go to the public baths. If you can't have a cat at home, you can go to the cat cafe and play with the cat. And if it's too small at home to read, you can go to a manga cafe. We get by like this. It's there.
Ah, that's it.
Yes, right there. These are mangas for girls, and those are for boys.
So these are for girls, and those mangas are for boys.
Over here, you can take a shower. This is a girls-only zone, pink. Here, you can read. Go on the internet. If you miss the last subway, you can also sleep here, freshen up, or take a shower. Well, I'm going to read my manga now.
Okay, bye. Leaving a house where space is lacking to go read in an even smaller space seems a bit absurd to me. But for €3 an hour, these manga cafes are crowded day and night and prove that the existence of these micro-houses is only possible because the city has been conceived as an extension of the home. The two are interdependent. One doesn't exist without the other. All the shops and services are in close proximity to the home. They're like an extension of it. The public squares act as the house's garden. The numerous restaurants replace the dining rooms, and the vending machines on every street corner are an annex of the refrigerator. With my eye more attuned now, I see that these microhouses are omnipresent. Faced with an urban scale of gigantic proportions and often uniform-style buildings, these tiny architectural objects manage to reintroduce a human dimension to the city. The urban space becomes, in a way, domesticated, which gives a playful, do-it-yourself air to the street. I have an appointment with the architect Manabu Naya, who built one of the smallest houses in Shibuya with a floor surface of just 16 square meters. I'm hoping he'll help me get a better understanding of Tokyo's urban organization, which reconciles these two antagonistic universes, the micro-home and gigantism. What fascinates me here in Tokyo is that no two houses are alike. They're all completely different in shape and size. It's hard to understand even how they've managed to be built. You sometimes get an impression of chaos.
After the Second World War, Japan was in ruins. There was almost no urban planning. But a lot of people from the provinces came to live in Tokyo. So it became a megalopolis, one of the biggest in the world. And as the price of land also shot up, people began to want to move out to the suburbs. But the commute into the city takes about an hour, or an hour and a half, just to get here. So traveling to work every day takes a long time. So people prefer to live in the city on small plots of land that belong to their family, for example, and they build vertical houses on them. There are a lot of houses of this type.
But how is it possible to find such small plots of land?
In Japan, the law requires the facade to be at least 2 meters wide in order to be able to construct. But it doesn't specify a minimum surface area. So we can find houses that have a floor surface of 15 square meters. In Tokyo, people generally want a floor surface of between 27 to 30 square meters. As a consequence, we have no other choice but to build vertically.
It's surprising to see all these gaps between the houses. In a city with such a space shortage, it seems to be a waste of precious square meters.
In Japan, to build a house in a residential area, the law requires there to be a minimum space of 50 centimeters between the houses. In that way, the air can circulate and some light can come in. Let's go and see the house that I built here.
That one.
Yes.
Wow.
It has 3 stories.
Yes, there are 3 windows.
I really wouldn't have thought it was possible to build on such a small surface.
The first time I came here to meet my client, I walked straight past it without noticing it. I turned back, and when I saw it, I was very surprised. It was so small I burst out laughing.
Shall we go in?
Yes.
This house, built over 3 stories, has 7 split levels which act as landings around a center staircase. It's very ingenious, but Manabu wants to take me directly out onto the roof terrace. Wow. It's amazing. Incredible. There's a great view on that side, too. What's surprising out on this terrace is that you realize just how small the buildable area is, whereas when you're inside the house, you completely forget it.
In architecture, there are all kinds of techniques, and it isn't just a question of calculation. In order to make a small space appear large, people need to have an impression of space. And that's what I've attempted to do here. When this house was finished and I came up here, I wasn't expecting to see such a skyline, because it's extremely rare in Tokyo. We're surrounded by tall buildings, and it's like we're on a plane in the middle of the city.
We can start cooking.
Micro house also means a micro barbecue, to which Satoshi has invited me. At the foot of the micro garden giving onto the sky, this is a special moment for Satoshi where he and his family can come together. It smells good.
Oh la la!
Wow, it's superb. Thank you. A piece of sausage. Great, thanks. Do you often have barbecues?
Yes.
Yes, we sometimes invite friends. That's right, her friends.
It's wonderful to be in the city and to be able to have a barbecue in your home. Oh, fava beans.
Hey, he handles the chopsticks well.
What's that?
That's fantastic. It's not easy to pick up fava beans with chopsticks.
In Japan, we practice using chopsticks with fava beans.
Yes, it takes practice.
I get the impression that your micro house in the heart of Tokyo is like a case that protects what's most precious and important to you.
That's right. I wanted to create a space where my family could come together. In Japan, we have a saying that expresses this idea. Hare to ke. Ke designates the everyday. And when the everyday persists over time and tension builds up, we end up becoming polluted. To cleanse ourselves, we need a peaceful place. That's how I see this house. A peaceful place where we can feel relaxed and comfortable. A place where we're happy. That's the spirit of this house.
1, 2, 3, kanpai!
At the end of my trip, I've gained a wealth of information from these micro-houses. Faced with a shortage of space in one of the world's biggest cities, they offer an interesting alternative between collective and private housing. But what I find most interesting is that they're the opposite of mass production, which has characterized the 20th century. These micro-houses are above all cultural objects. made to measure for city dwellers who no longer want to suffer the stress and inconveniences of the big city, but want to take advantage of all the resources that city life has to offer. My name's Philippe Simé. I'm a philosopher, and I'm interested in what architecture tells us about our lifestyles. I'll take you to explore the most singular habitats on the planet, to discover the meaning behind them, and to share in their riches. Day breaks over Kyoto, a city with a prestige dating from the time it was the imperial capital of Japan, for more than 1,000 years until 1869. Nestled at the foot of its surrounding hills, Kyoto is today a modern city, but one which has successfully been able to conserve the greatest cultural riches of Japan. With its 2,000 temples and shrines spread out across every district, the city is impregnated with the sacred. The quintessence of Japanese lifestyle can be seen in its architecture, its bridges, its gardens, and nature, which is celebrated everywhere. To me, visiting this city is like going back in time to discover the Masia of craftsmen, which were townhouses constructed from the 17th century on. Built entirely in wood, intimately linked to nature, and imbued with spirituality, they perfectly reflect their city, which was composed mostly of wooden homes until the end of World War II. Although many Masia have been demolished since the early 20th century, these past few years have seen a keen interest in them arise. There are 8,000 of them still spread across the city, fixed up and lived in. I wonder if this clearly stated choice of living in a traditional residence is driven by cultural or architectural motives. Why, in the modern world, would anyone want to live in a home anchored in an ancestral lifestyle?
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome. We were expecting you.
Thank you very much.
Please come in.
Wonderful. Amazing.
This is our garden.
Amazing.
This is my wife Fumi and my son Junichiro.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Please.
Thanks.
This way.
Three years ago, Kishiro decided to live in this Masia where he's greeting me today. Disenchanted with uniform, over-sanitized modern architecture, he bought this abandoned townhouse and had it restored to its original style.
Masia are the result of know-how accumulated by the carpenters of the past. They're the quintessence of Japanese culture. I thought to myself, if one day I'm to own my home, I want it to be a house like this. Even if lots of people say that a Masia isn't very comfortable, I love discovering day in, day out the wisdom and the smart tricks invented by our ancestors. Thanks to that, I find that the Masia is very pleasant to live in.
Do you think that these very old houses can be adapted for modern-day life?
With modern-day objects and appliances, a Masia is very comfortable to live in. In fact, it's a very flexible house, very easy to transform. In that sense, it's totally adapted to modern living.
Keishiro takes me upstairs. The most spacious part of the house and, in his eyes, the most representative, due to the fact that it can be modulated and transformed according to his needs. Beyond the functional aspects, I'm also struck by the bareness of this floor. Rooms and corridors are empty, with few objects or decoration. There's nothing here to remind you of modern daily life. It's as if I've gone back in time. What room is this exactly?
This is our guest room. Philippe, you are a guest today. Would you like to stay here in our guest room? Yes, here.
Very well. And so what is this room?
This is reserved for official guests. It's the most important room in the house. In fact, it's designed so that the guest has the best possible view from the room.
And this space is completely adaptable depending on the situation.
Exactly. For example, you can remove the sliding doors. You do it like this.
You can remove them all.
Yes. And all you're left with are the pillars and beams. In fact, the house is built with a very light wooden structure. And for it to resist earthquakes, it must have a very simple structure and very light furniture.
A Westerner might find the house devoid of all life. But a quote from the writer, Junichiro Tanizaki, springs to mind. Beauty is given to a Japanese room by the absence of all accessories. But in a Masia, emptiness is merely apparent. It makes room for the essential. Natural materials, simple forms, and pure lines, which create an open space diffused with light.
The basics of Japanese architecture are very simple. There are pillars and beams, but no actual walls. In a way, the building and nature are connected in space. Japanese design is very simple and minimalist. All superfluous decoration is absent, and a single flower decorates the empty space. That's the Japanese aesthetic.
I go down to see Fumi, who practices ikebana, Japanese flower arranging. Ikebana is more than making a bouquet of flowers. What does it represent to you?
Japan has 4 distinct seasons, so we want to introduce nature into the home by decorating it with flowers, depending on the time of year. We not only put flowers in full bloom, but also buds which are yet to blossom. And that's how we introduce time into ikebana, and we try to represent its passing in nature. This arrangement is composed of red and white flowers, 2 colors of prosperity in Japan. These are because we're welcoming you as a guest today.
Everything, down to the simplest gesture, is codified here. Keishiro's gardeners, who are here working this morning, also seem to have very clear directives. What are you planting today?
This is a type of cherry tree known as hanakaido. Narakawa-san asked to plant a seasonal tree which he could admire from the living room. In the Masia, the garden is just next to the living room, so that it can be contemplated from there. Unlike in Europe, we don't go into the garden to rest or for barbecue. Do you want to help us plant it?
Okay. Where do I put it? Here?
Yes.
So I just place the moss.
Yes, and without pressing down too hard. The moss will take root by itself.
Why do all Masia have a garden?
Masias are located in densely packed spaces, so it's difficult to introduce nature here. So the presence of a garden is essential to obtaining light and a breeze, for example.
I guess so, but they must exist more than just for functional reasons. Is there a symbolic dimension to the garden?
Yes, indeed. This small garden is like a vast imaginary landscape. This stone symbolizes an island, as does that one over there. We use an effective perspective to make the garden look much bigger than it really is.
So the garden is more for contemplation than it is functional.
Exactly. Traditionally, the garden was purely for contemplation and children weren't allowed to play in it. It was reserved for the master of the house, but that has all changed today. Now you can go out and walk on the stones. But some parts are still forbidden. You can step here, here too. This is okay, but this is forbidden.
In home gardens in Europe, there are always lots of plants. Here, I find it astonishing and very beautiful that there are so few plants and just a few flowers laid out in a very balanced way across the whole garden.
The reason there aren't so many plants and flowers is because in the universe of a Japanese garden, the ma are very important. Ma are voids, empty spaces. Visually, ma and plants create a rhythm together in space. When you're sitting in the master of the house's spot, you feel like you're looking out onto a large tree. But if you really look there, you see a much smaller plant. All is very calculated, so you must have voids. That way, each individual plant creates a world around it, and all of these small worlds form a larger universe. If there are no ma and everything is joined together, there would only be one single universe with no perspective.
What is the true meaning of ma?
Ma is what you would call the off part of space, a design of emptiness. When you think of design, you think of the design of something that exists physically, but ma is the design of what does not exist.
I'm astonished to see how much each part or function of a Masia is loaded with spiritual meaning. I'm starting to understand that in Japan, the concept of space is based on a philosophy in which the senses and the sacred are inseparable. It's not a matter of chance that temples and Masia are forms of architecture with wood constituting the entire structure. I head up to the wooded hills overlooking the city to visit the Buddhist temple Senyuji. Master carpenter Tadanori Kimura is currently overseeing its restoration. Like his predecessors of bygone years, he has the necessary skills to restore both a Masia and an imperial temple. You're a master carpenter who restores the most sacred temples in Japan. So why are you interested in Masia, which are basically working-class townhouses?
Nowadays, constructions in wood, be it a temple, a shrine, or a house, are technically very similar. If you want to pass on traditional techniques to the next generation, the carpenters of Kyoto have to know how to rebuild anything.
Restoring a temple like this one presupposes the knowledge of very old techniques.
Regarding wooden architecture, ancient Japanese techniques reached a certain level of perfection. The farther you go back in time, the more the construction techniques are basic, but the results are extraordinary. Since antiquity, Japanese culture has embraced wood, and we still continue to build with it. It's an indispensable material in our homes. In Masia, there's notably the main pillar, a huge piece of timber. Along with the spiritual heart of the house, the tokonoma, the alcove shrine. I'm convinced that to maintain a wooden house, you must love it and take good care of it. My laborers are working on this gate, Chukushumon, because the decorative flower broke off. So now they're restoring it. If we let it deteriorate further, it would be seen as negligence on the part of the head monk. So we need to show people that we're taking care of these buildings.
The philosopher Martin Heidegger said that building is not simply constructing a dwelling, it's making it live. By which he meant creating a fundamental relationship between man and the world. This notion of unity gives space its full meaning. In Kyoto, the Masia embodies the livable space where everything is linked, where the house is as much a way of being as an object, where architecture not only serves to organize the various rooms, but also to place man at the center of his home.
I'm setting up an ornament called kabuto.
A kabuto is a samurai helmet.
That's right. It's for Children's Day, formerly Boys' Day, when parents wished for their son's good health. First, you put this piece here, and the other piece here. Now, I'll put it in the tokonoma. Like that, everyone can see it.
The passing on of this ritual to his son is one more way for Kishiro to be in osmosis with his house. Here, in front of the tokonoma, or recess, I realize that everything is designed for harmony. Tradition and gesture, mind and matter. Kishiro, is this Masia built all with the same wood?
No. In fact, there are a number of species used in Kyoto Masia. Take the design of this tokonoma. This is ebony, and that is cherry. We also use cedar from the island of Yakushima, but the most important part is this pillar, the toko bashira.
So it's this Sugi tree trunk that gives true worth not only to the tokonoma, but to the whole room.
For the main pillar, we use Sugi wood from the forest of Kitayama in the hills of Kyoto. It's a tree native to Kyoto with delicate folds on the surface. For this pillar, we use Kitayama Sugi, as it's a very precious wood, and I am very proud of it.
With such praises sung for this wood, I was keen to visit the cradle of this wonder tree, the mysterious forest of Kitayama. Just a few kilometers northwest of Kyoto, I finally find myself standing before these Sugi trees, the cedars native to Japan. Deep within the forest, I meet forester Osamu Nakata, a master of the singular art of growing these trees and producing timber for the construction of Masia.
You hold it here
Okay.
and pull downwards.
Okay.
Your turn.
Here?
Yes. And one big pull.
Okay.
Good job. That's excellent.
Amidst these trees standing at attention on the hillside, pointing to the sky, I realize that their wood is more than a future pillar or beam. It's a sensitive material that bears all the virtues that the people of Kyoto attribute to nature, and to the forest of Kitayama, the oldest cultivated forest in the world. It's fantastic. How did I do?
Very well.
I'm pretty proud of myself. The amazing thing is, once you've removed the bark, the wood is so smooth and light.
Yes. And as the tree contains water, the surface is still a bit damp.
Once the bark is off, how does it dry?
We leave it to dry a while in the forest, and then we cut it and take it to our depot. We have plenty of trees drying out in our depot. Shall we go see?
Okay, let's go. On the way to his village, Nakata-san tells me why Sugi wood became so precious. In the 16th century, the greatest tea ceremony master in Japan, Senrikyu, was seeking to perfect his art. And on discovering the Sugi, found that its paleness and softness would be the absolute refinement and represented in his eyes the aesthetic ideal of a tea house. Like all the master foresters who preceded him in his village, Osamu Nakata has continued to improve his technique to obtain this aesthetic ideal.
These are Sugi trunks after being polished. They're the end product.
They look so light, but I couldn't carry one for long. Will all these trunks be used for building Masia?
No, the trunks used in Masia are these ones. They're used as pillars in the tokonoma. Their purpose is to highlight what's on display so the tokonoma stand out. That's the most important role of these trees. Without Sugi, the objects displayed in the tokonoma wouldn't appear so beautiful. That's the role these trees play. This way. We're sanding down the trunk with real sand. It's sand that you can find only at the bottom of a pool beneath a waterfall called Bodai no Taki. The grains are very fine and break up easily. Since the olden days, this sand has been used to sand and polish Sugi.
Can I try?
Sure, try with my mother.
Okay.
Go ahead. Mama, could you show him how?
Okay, I take some sand.
Take a handful of sand, put it on the trunk, then rub.
Like this?
Yes,
And then I rub.
that's right.
It's like massaging the wood.
See how it cleans the surface of the trunk? It becomes all smooth.
You smooth out all the rough patches, and you can still feel the veins in the wood. It's very sensual.
Let's put it in the tank.
Okay, let's do this. It's marvelous. Is this the final stage?
Yes, it is. This one will now get married.
Married? What do you mean?
It's going to get married. Since forever here, when we give the trunk its last wash, the final step, it means there's a buyer. So we say, this one's getting married. It's as if we were talking about our darling daughters leaving the home to get married.
When I watch how you work, I think the things we make are quite similar. When you take care of them, they also take care of you. As night falls across the valley, the close links which unite the elements of the Japanese lifestyle finally become clear. Everything seems to have its place, from mountain to town, from wood to house, from matter to mind.
There's rice on top and egg custard underneath. Enough for 6 people.
Can we serve it all?
Yes, and that's the sauce for the tempura.
Back at Keishiro's house, a surprise awaits. Following the strict rules of tradition, a typical meal is served in the large room upstairs to wish the guest of honor farewell. It's magnificent, really magnificent. Thank you so much.
It's a traditional Japanese meal.
It looks delicious. And I adore Japanese food. Let's go. Better understanding the way this house is used, I take full advantage of the event. Equipped, like my guests, with the small cushion and a low table which constitute the evening's furniture, I feel at one with the spirit of the room and the moment.
Can't you sit cross-legged?
You mean this isn't right?
No, only women sit like that.
Oh, okay, I'll change. As my visit comes to an end, the moments of daily life shared with Keishiro and his family leave me with a feeling of having tested a rare lifestyle which implies discipline and constraint, but which also depends on a constant attention to each moment in the construction, to the materials, to nature, and to everyday gestures, even the most banal. I also believe that living in a Masia is much more than merely living. It's adopting a lifestyle elaborated down the centuries which shows all the subtle forms of interaction between the individual and his environment.